Sutanor hasi bhashatum Katahari kato dharka Satamshu sarasi dhruvam Etat, this, Shushrushatam, of those eager to hear. Vidvan, O learned, Sutta Goswami, Na, unto us, Arhasi, may you do it. Bhashatum, just to explain it. Kata, topics. Harikata Udarka, result in the topics of the Lord. Satam, of the devotees. Su, may be. Sadasi, in the assembly of. Dhruvam, certainly. Translation. O learned Sutta Goswami, please continue to explain such topics to us, because we are all eager to hear. Besides that, topics which result in the discussion of the Lord Hari should certainly be discussed in the assembly of devotees. Purport. As we have already quoted above from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami, even mundane things, if dovetailed in the service of Lord Sri Krishna, are accepted as transcendental. For example, the epics or the histories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are specifically recommended for the less intelligent classes, women, Shudras, and unworthy sons of the higher caste, are also accepted as Vedic literature because they are compiled in connection with the activities of the Lord. Mahabharata is accepted as the fifth division of the Vedas after its first four divisions, namely Sama, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva. The less intelligent do not accept Mahabharata as part of the Vedas, but great sages and authorities accept it as the fifth division of the Vedas. Bhagavad Gita is also part of the Mahabharata, and it is full of the Lord's instruction for the less intelligent class of men. Some less intelligent men say that Bhagavad Gita is not meant for householders, but such foolish men forget that Bhagavad Gita was explained to Arjuna, a grihastha, family man, and spoken by the Lord in his role as a grihastha. So Bhagavad Gita, although containing the high philosophy of the Vedic wisdom, is for the beginners in the transcendental science. And Srimad Bhagavatam is for graduates and postgraduates in the transcendental science. Therefore, literatures like Mahabharata, the Puranas, and similar other literatures which are full of the pastimes of the Lord are all transcendental literatures, and they should be discussed with full confidence in the society of great devotees. The difficulty is that such literatures, when discussed by professional men, appear to be mundane literature, like histories or epics, because there are so many historical facts and figures. It is said here, therefore, that such literature should be discussed in the assembly of devotees. Unless they are discussed by devotees, such literatures cannot be relished by the higher class of men. So the conclusion is that the Lord is not impersonal in the ultimate sense. He is the Supreme Person, and He has His different activities. He's the leader of all living entities, and He descends at His will and by His personal energy to reclaim the fallen souls. Thus He plays exactly like the social, political, or religious leaders, because such roles ultimately culminate in the discussion of topics of the Lord. All such preliminary topics are also transcendental. That is the way of spiritualizing the civic activities of human society. Men have inclinations for studying history and many other mundane literatures, stories, fiction, dramas, magazines, newspapers, and so forth. So let them be dovetailed with the transcendental service of the Lord, and all of them will turn to the topics relished by all devotees. The propaganda that the Lord is impersonal, that he has no activity, and that he is a dumb stone without any name and form, has encouraged people to become godless, faithless demons. And the more they deviate from the transcendental activities of the Lord, the more they become accustomed to mundane activities that only clear their path to hell instead of return them home back to Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam begins from the history of the Pandavas with necessary politics and social activities, and yet Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be Paramahansa Sanghita, or the Vedic literature meant for the topmost transcendentalists. And it describes Param Jnanam, the highest transcendental knowledge. Pure devotees of the Lord are all Paramahansas, and they're like the swans who know the art of sucking milk out of a mixture of milk and water. And we have a footnote by Srila Prabhupada. Even 50 years ago, the social structure of all Indians was so arranged that they would not read any literature that was not connected with the activities of the Lord. They would not play any drama not connected with the Lord. They would not organize a fair or ceremony not connected with the Lord. Nor would they visit a place that was not holy and sanctified by the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, even the common man in the village would talk about Ramayana and Mahabharata, Gita and Bhagavatam, even from his very childhood. But by the influence of the age of Kali, they have been dragged to the civilization of dogs and hogs, laboring for bread without any sense of transcendental knowledge. Translation again. O learned Sutta Goswami, please explain such topics to us, because we are all eager to hear. Besides that, topics which result in the discussion of the Lord Hari should certainly be discussed in the assembly of devotees. Om Jnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, you hear of the eagerness in the exchange between Pritchard Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami. And also you hear about that eagerness in the dialogues that Shukadev relays to Pritchard Maharaj, such as between Maitreya and Vidura. There's so many nested dialogues in Srimad Bhagavatam, which doesn't make it confusing, actually. It makes it exciting. It's hard for newcomers often to understand the emphasis on authoritativeness in bhakti. Shouldn't bhakti just come from your heart and just be whatever you want it to be? And in that way, everything works out because it's coming from you. Why all these stipulations about authoritativeness? Who are you hearing from? Bhagavatam is meant to be discussed in the assembly of devotees. Mundane persons think this is just some kind of Hindu granny folklore that you can only hear about Krishna in the society of devotees. Well, what's the big deal? You hear from this place, you hear from that place. It's all just part of the cosmos. But when we understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality Godhead, that means Krishna has personal preferences and personal ways of his wanting to be approached. Just like we do. We won't let anyone just approach us in any old kind of way if we have some amount of dignity and respectability. Suppose you're walking down the street in Byron Bay or you're on the beach and some stranger just comes up to you and says, tell me all about your childhood. You would be quite stunned. Who's the dearest to you? And what is your relationship, the one who's dearest to you? You would be shocked because there's no relationship. Similarly, Krishna has his way of making himself known because he's a person. And he says that in the association of devotees, I can be understood. It's a mystery, my appearance in this world, my activities. But I'm speaking in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Bhakto Sime Sakacheti, because he's my devotee and he's my friend. Therefore, he can understand what I'm saying. Everyone in the material world wants to be understood. It's very painful personally when you feel that no one understands you, or even if some people understand you, there are others who misunderstand you. It's a very agonizing feeling to be misunderstood. No, that's not what I meant. You don't understand. That's not what I was thinking. Krishna is a person, and he arranges that he can be understood his way. But we resent that because we're rebellious impersonalists. No, it's all the same, whether Krishna wants it this way or someone else wants it that way. It's just all the whatever. And actually, guess what? All the paths lead to the same goal. Oh, that sounds really attractive, doesn't it? Wow, I can just shape my own program because all the paths, sooner or later, bring you to the same place. Okay, here at New Govardhan, Krishna Village, Krishna Pad, they've got their royal road. That's all well and good, especially as long as I'm getting really nice prasad. But we all know. That's the underlying attitude. We all know it's a big world out there with many perspectives and possibilities. And anyway, it all just works out to be the same. So this contamination affects us so deeply because we can't accept that the ultimate reality is personal. Krishna has his own personal inclinations. He has his own personal sensitivities. Inclinations and sensitivities are so dear to us, but we don't want Krishna to have them. We're so angry if someone overlooks our sensitivities. But for Krishna, no. He should be wide open and just accept whatever. So this is our disease. As far as all paths supposedly leading to the same goal, I often give this example. If you say that all paths lead to the same goal, you must have a superior vantage point. You're up in the air in a helicopter, for example, and you see all the roads converging on the same destination. So when you say all paths lead to the same goal, I want to see your helicopter. I want to see you up there. Oh, tell me, you're able to survey everything, get the full panorama, see the whole picture, and then you can say authoritatively, all paths lead to the same goal. But of course you can't do that. You're down on the ground and you're speculating that if I go south to Sydney, some or other I'll wind up in Brisbane. If I go way out west to Perth, some or other I'll wind up on the Gold Coast. We think in this way based on arrogance and pride, in spite of our very humble, insignificant position. So you don't have that vantage point. You're not high up in the air and you can see the so-called reality of all paths converging on the same goal. You don't see that. Yet, we're so proud that we just assert that. Yeah, all paths lead to the same goal. Everyone knows that, right? And everyone nods their head. Meanwhile, you're dealing with blind people. You're dealing with persons they can't see. But yeah, all paths lead to the same goal. What do you think? Yeah, everyone knows that. No one is seeing where the paths are going. No one even knows what the goal is. It's not even considered crucial that you know what is the goal. In fact, many people think that living life without a grand goal is cool. Why should you just hem yourself in with some firm destination? Just be ready to take whatever the moment brings, as long as the moment brings you happiness. And then they tell you that it doesn't matter what happens, it's all part of the learning experience. And then you ask, well, okay, learning experience, life is such, what's the lesson? What are you supposed to learn? Oh no, it's all about learning. Well, tell me the lesson. You go to school and you study, it's a learning experience, but you don't know what the lesson is that you're supposed to master. So all this talk goes on because we're impersonalists. We refuse to accept that Krishna has sensitivities and he has his own way. We're so quick to say, I've got my way. What's your path? I haven't discovered my path yet. But what about Krishna's path? He can't have a path, but we tiny, insignificant living entities, we decide what the path is. So this is called impersonalism. We refuse to acknowledge the personal characteristics of the ultimate source. Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami are not so foolish. And they know the nature of their audience. Parikshit Maharaj is eager. Let's hear about Krishna. And the acharyas point out that even when Bhagavatam is talking about creation and subcreation and manus and kings, all that history always concludes with discussion of Krishna. Therefore, it's all well and good. That's one perspective. Sanatana Goswami comes at it from another angle. He says every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is saturated with love of Krishna. So you might say, well, when I'm reading about the kings and I'm reading about this and that and the cosmos and the process of creation, next chapter is entitled Process of Creation. How's that love of Krishna? But we need to make some spiritual advancement because Bhagavatam is actually, as we heard in the purport, Paramahamsa Sanghita. It is the song for the topmost class of persons, the swan-like persons. So it takes us some time to manifest our swan-like nature. And as we spiritually advance, Srimad Bhagavatam assumes differing visions for us. And ultimately, we're meant to aspire for that goal of seeing what Sanatana Goswami sees, that every syllable is saturated with Krishna prema. This is why Lord Chaitanya has instructed, before you are liberated, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and after liberation, go on hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is our eternal activity, hearing about Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj is very shrewd, and in the first canto, you hear that he looked around in the audience. There he is, prepared to give up his body in 7 days, and he wants to know what's the best thing to do. He actually knows, but being a merciful, retired king, he wants to benefit everyone so that everyone can hear the solid conclusion that he already knows. This is his mercy. So he looks around in the audience because yogis and rishis, sadhus from all over the universe have gathered there to witness his departure. They know something is up, something big is up. This is not just an ordinary departure from this world. So Parikshit Maharaj looks around, the acharyas point out, and he can see that not everyone accepts pure bhakti as the ultimate goal of life. Many of them don't know, and many of them are caught up in elevation to the heavenly planets, metaphysical speculation, yogic powers. He looks around and sees that when I asked my question to Shukadeva Goswami about what is the best thing to do when you're about to die and what is the best thing to do in all circumstances, when I asked that question, he's strategic, he's chief executive, he says, I don't think I'm going to get a unanimous response from this audience. If I put the question to the General Assembly, I'm not going to get a unanimous response. So therefore, I'm going to prepare the ground so that when Shukadeva Goswami speaks, the authoritative conclusion will be presented. By my questions, I'm going to do that because I want everyone on board and understanding that hearing about Krishna is the ultimate goal of life. Pritchard Maharaj did the same thing later in the 10th canto when Shukadeva Goswami was describing the Rasa Leela. He looked around and saw there are doubts on the faces of some of these people here. They think that Krishna's dancing with his consorts is some kind of mundane activity. And they're wondering, if Krishna is the supreme Brahman, why is he behaving like this? Dealing in a scene of material attachment. So Pritchard Maharaj noticed that. And so he purposely asked questions to Shukadeva Goswami so that Shukadeva Goswami would clear up the situation. And he even accepted chastisement by Shukadeva Goswami when Pritchard asked on behalf of the audience, wait a minute now, how can the gopis become free of material attachment when they seem to be acting like mundane persons who are materially attached? So what's going on here? How can the listener become free from Maya when the listener is hearing Maya activities? So Pritchard presents this to Shukadeva Goswami, who chastises him. Haven't we covered this ground before? Of course, Shukadeva Goswami knows that Pritchard Maharaj is speaking for the benefit of others. Let us understand the dynamics of hearing about Krishna in the association of devotees. I've been talking to some persons who come to see me, and I've been gently urging them, always appreciate the wealth of devotee association. There may be disagreements, there may be inconveniences and misunderstandings, but that's just one side, the lesser important side. The most important facet is that by hearing about Krishna in the association of devotees, the talks are more potent and sweeter. So in other words, we need others in bhakti. And that may be hard for us to admit because especially Western so-called civilization trains you to think the more independent you are, the more self-sufficient you are, the more advanced and progressive you are. Whereas in the third world and the second world, people know they need each other to protect from disasters. But in the Western world, you're meant to present yourself as self-reliant. So we may bring that mentality into bhakti, that devotees are okay, but they can get on your nerves sometimes, and better just to have your own bubble. One devotee at New Varjan in New Zealand was telling me how, I appreciate all talk about community. Let me tell you what community means. Community means I come out of my house when I feel like associating with others, and when I'm tired of everyone, I just go in my house and don't come out for 2 months. That's community. And my wife would say, well, that's a Kiwi definition, those Kiwis. But I've also heard it here at New Govardhan that persons will say, the disadvantage of living with devotees is that when you have an argument, you can't get away from them. You pass by them on the road, you know. When it's time for a festival or you go into the temple room, there they are, your enemy, the one who's dissed you. Whereas if you live far away, you can come for a festival every few months, you know, and just do your own thing and not have to see persons who you disagree with. Persons who 20 years ago made some slip up or didn't acknowledge your glories 20 years ago. So I've heard that from persons who live in the community and around. Better just be away, because then you can just make a cameo appearance when you feel like it, say Hari Bol to everyone, and then leave. Of course, you can't just come on Sunday anymore and bring your container and load up and put it in the freezer for the rest of the week. But we have this fear that you get too close to devotees and it just doesn't seem to work out. So there are inconveniences. This is Kali Yuga, and social relationships in Kali Yuga are always problematic. And because that's in the material atmosphere, it does affect devotees to some degree according to their spiritual status. But we need to focus on the advantages. Just like Lord Kapila Deva explains in the third canto, Satam Prasangan Mama Virya Samvada, talks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potency. And that potency is most realized in the association of dedicated devotees. Then the talks reveal more power and more sweetness. It's not that they weren't powerful and weren't sweet, but Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has arranged that the sweetness and power reveals itself more in the association of dedicated devotees. And dedicated devotees means dedicated to devotional service. That's what puts the extra surcharge, the spice in the atmosphere that is so irresistible. Since we need devotees to hear about Krishna in a potent and sweet way, therefore we understand that advantage outweighs the material inconveniences. But if we lose sight of the advantages, sure, we'll just become overwhelmed by the inconveniences. I had a misunderstanding with that one. This one doesn't appreciate me, doesn't agree with me. I used to explain that often when you first come to bhakti, all the devotees look like shining angels. And you feel so insignificant. Like Chaitanya Charitamrita says, you feel like a duck amongst elephants. But after a while, familiarity creeps in, and you start to see everyone without their halos. Give it 2 years, and if you're not careful, you start to think that, you know, devotees are okay, but I haven't found anyone and does things the way I do. Therefore, we've got a problem here. We don't think that we have the problem. We think, look, the devotees, they just don't do the things. They don't do the things the way I do. They don't think the way I do. This is a problem here. And the only way the problem is resolved is I'll just go off on my own. Such thinking deprives you of what Pritchett Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami have left as our inheritance through parampara. They want you to become eager to hear about Krishna in the association of devotees. Look at Pritchett Maharaj. He knows not everyone in this audience on the bank of the river is a pure bhakta. Not everyone agrees that Krishna is the ultimate goal of life. But I and Shukadeva Goswami, we're going to carry on anyway. We'll bring as many with us to the supreme destination as possible through hearing. So you have a community where there are all different types of devotees, different levels, some slackers, some staunchos, and it takes a while to know how to navigate through that ocean. But if we know what we want, and this is a point I stressed to quite a few devotees who came to see me yesterday, you have to know what you want. If you don't know what you want, you'll be buffeted here and there. This one will say this, that one will say that. But if you're participating in the devotional program, which includes hearing about Krishna, it's very easy to stay on course. You associate with those who are dedicated to those activities. Doesn't mean you disrespect others, give them the cold shoulder, but you know where to go for good advice. You look and see who's engaged in Krishna's service, who's eager to hear about Krishna. You appreciate all living entities, but at the same time, when you need to take on opinions and advice, you look for those who have a taste for Krishna. Even a thirst for Krishna. In the 10th canto, there's the term Krishna Trishna. Goes together very nicely. Krishna Trishna. The thirst, Trishna, for Krishna. That is the greatest luxury. That is the greatest wealth. And as we heard in a couple of verses back, hearing about Krishna stops the whirlpools of the material energy. Because by hearing about Krishna, you actually become Atma Prasad, self-satisfied. You get the mercy of being satisfied in your core being. And also, the whole process is authorized as transcendental. Here again, we are dealing with authorization. We don't like to think that our happiness endeavors should be authorized. Happiness comes from you, right? You feel like doing something, you do it. You see that something could make you happy, you do it. What is this authoritativeness that's always at every step in bhakti? But if you truly want to be happy, why not listen to the experts? Why not take on the most knowledgeable science of happiness? Why do we think we are so competent to invent everything on our own? Look at our track record. Don't think too much about it. Lifetime after lifetime, what have we been doing? Yet, when it comes to happiness, well, I know how to be happy. We're failures. But that's a hard thing to admit. Sometimes when I'm at outreach programs, and the audience is tuning in, I ask them, how many of you would have the guts to say to your family or friends, let's say it's a holiday, Australian Day or something, and you're having a meal with your family and friends, and you just kind of firmly but gently announce, I have to say, I'm a failure at material enjoyment. People will be horrified, even though it's true about them, besides you, that you don't say those kind of things. Oh, they'd be shocked. I've been using this example for decades, and each time the audience is like, it's true for us, but we would never say that. Because what will your friends and your mundane friends and mundane family tell you? Oh, come on, don't talk like that. Hey, have another beer. You must be lonely. We'll match you up with someone. Don't give up hope. Even though they are hopeless and they're depressed and their family life is totally in tatters. But still, don't give up. No, don't talk like that. Have another beer. Come on. Because no one likes to see someone trying to escape the Titanic. When, the ship's not going down. It's okay. Don't panic now. Don't head for the lifeboats. You may have heard me tell a story from my childhood. I was growing up in New York, and my father sometimes would like to pile all the kids in the car and take us to New York's International Airport. At that time, there was one major international airport. And so there was a road around the perimeter of the airport, and the cars would park on the side of the road, and everyone would get out of their cars and face the incoming airplanes which would touch down on the other side of the road. So the airplane with its wheels, its landing wheels down, was practically just skimming over the top of your head. It felt like that. So the New Yorkers, lords of the universe, would would park their cars on the edge of the road, a long line, and everyone would get out of the cars and face the incoming aircraft. And just feel the technological progress, feel the glories of humanity. Just like you might go see the Great Barrier Reef or something. This is New York enjoyment, just the thunderous aircraft right over your head and landing on the other side of the road. And you do it at peak time when a plane is landing every 30 seconds. And then you really feel exhilarated. Your life feels so important. But anyway, there, my brothers and sisters and my father, and we're just, with our backs to the parked car, we're facing the incoming planes. And after about 5 minutes, I decided, I don't know about this. I was about, 11 years old. I've had enough of this. I mean, this looks dangerous. The noise is just thunderous, and I don't see the fun in this. In fact, who knows, one of those planes could come in a bit low, and that's the end of us. So I went to get back into the car. And my father immediately jumped on my case. Oh, you think you're so smart. If there's danger, why are you running away? We'll go through this danger as a family together. I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I want my life turning out like this. You think you're clever, getting inside the car while we stay out. If you sense there's danger, then we go through it as a family. Do you understand, son? No, I didn't understand. So this is the social pressure we face if we dare to admit the truth. I'm a failure at material enjoyment. Pritchett Maharaj is clearing the path from failure to the ultimate success. And he's doing it so gorgeously that our eagerness in hearing about it will increase. And that eagerness will save us from life's greatest challenges. So many setbacks materially can happen, but if we cling to hearing and chanting about Krishna, our life becomes a success. I've also been hearing from devotees who are going through some real ordeals, material challenges. But the mistake they make is they stop chanting. I'm just knocked out, Maharaj. You just got to understand, Guru Maharaj. I just got no life in me anymore. And I agree, the circumstances they describe to me are they're very challenging, very powerful. But in those circumstances, we have to cling to our eagerness to hear about Krishna more than ever. It seems paradoxical or contradictory, doesn't it? Well, let me just back off from the chanting, and then when things clear up, I can better get into the chanting and hearing. This world never clears up. There's always one upheaval after another. You may get a lull from time to time, but never let go of your lifeline. So I've been emphasizing that point. In fact, not only do you not let go, but you hold on tighter. And then Krishna promises you in Bhagavad Gita, you'll cross over all obstacles by his grace. And it's a great lesson to see that. When materially you're knocked down and can't see a way out, just like Arjuna in the first chapter. Another title for the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, besides introduction or setting the scene, another name is the Yoga of Despair. So even the Yoga of Despair is crucially important when it's part of Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes we have to cope with what Arjuna coped with in terms relative to us. He saw no good options. He was crushed. And he's a human being far beyond our capacity, yet he felt crushed. In these circumstances, you cling more tightly to the lifeline of hearing about Krishna in the association of devotees. I heard Prabhupada say that anything can be tolerated in good association. Anything. So you might say, well, anything? I mean, this material world can throw some real blows at you. But anything, if you have good association. So therefore, in spite of misunderstandings and inconveniences, we should desperately cling to the association of devotees. And in this way, we'll taste the sweetness and the power of hearing about Krishna increasingly, because that is Krishna's personal system. All right, any questions, comments from our senior Vaishnavas? Okay, senior Vaishnav, you have a comment?
Well, I'm wondering, so we have a minimum rounds of 16 for chanting, but for hearing, we don't necessarily make a commitment. So I'm wondering if you can share how we can make a firm commitment to the hearing process.
You have to just... He's saying for chanting, we have a minimum dosage of 16 rounds. But what about for reading and hearing about Krishna? We have the temple program, and you have books, I hope. The books are meant to be opened and read. Every day you should read something. Especially if you're in the ashram, you have a golden opportunity to really focus on reading Prabhupada's books. I was talking about this with Mukunda Maharaj. He was reminding me of something we instituted in New Zealand in our urban outreach ashrams and Krishna pad type scenes. We required everyone to read Prabhupada's books 2 hours a day. And so I've seen over the decades, this has made such an extraordinary difference. Because during the day, we're doing so-called innovative, creative outreach, but we need the anchor, and the anchor is Prabhupada's books. And so Mukunda Maharaj was telling me, he said, I remember that, and I've been watching the results. And I said, I've been surprised at the results too. Decade after decade, devotees are reading Prabhupada's books 2 hours a day. If they're single or householders, one has to be flexible. But because they did it when they were single, when they become householders, they can't forget the taste. And they're always saying, oh, I got to get back to reading like I did when I was in the ashram. And I like that. They remember. So we should have a plan for a steady diet of hearing and chanting. And while you're engaging in devotional service, your hearing and chanting becomes more attentive. And by your attentive hearing and chanting, your devotional service increases and the quality gets better. So everything feeds into everything. Everything feeds into everything. So you have to decide what you want. How eager are you to hear about Krishna? Sometimes there are challenging times. Sometimes there are service marathons. Sometimes there are upheavals in the material world. But you should know what your lifeline is, and as quick as possible get back to it. When you have that kind of commitment and dedication, Krishna takes you seriously. So Mukunda Maharaj and I were discussing how there's so much talk about Prabhupada in the center. Well and good. But what's the use of talking that if you're not reading his books daily? Because he said his books are a better way of knowing him than physical association. So you have, again, here's another case of taking a person's procedures for getting to know him, considering that as your guideline, not, well, I think this and therefore I'll approach in this way. No, Srila Prabhupada said the best way to know me is to read my books. So always have some daily plan for that. Even as a householder, okay, read one chapter, read one page, read something. Have some daily plan. And know when you're drifting from your daily plan. Just like recently we found out, many devotees haven't read Chaitanya Charitamrita. A book that Prabhupada gave us for us to enjoy, he said. I'm doing this so devotees all over the world can enjoy Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he always described how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his Guru Maharaj, in relaxed moments would just read Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we have all these treats. We must take advantage of them. So you point out that we don't have a vow for reading a certain amount of time. I was discussing with Mukunda Maharaj how many leaders feel that we shouldn't add on to Prabhupada's vows and add things onto the initiation vows. You vow to read X amount, as well as chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 rules. But some or other, everyone should have this spirit instilled in them. So I'm glad that Mukunda Maharaj reminded me of something I guess took for granted, because I've been asking for this for so long. And I've seen, after 25 years of Western outreach especially, I've seen it's make all the difference. Otherwise I'd go crazy. Dealing with the Wild West, you know. One day it's Jai Maharaj, the next day, bye Maharaj. One day, you've saved my life, Patita Pavana. The next day, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, I'm out of here. So, Prabhupada's books are the saving grace, and that's the core of our mission. Okay? Anything else? Vaishnavis? Yes.
Maharaj, we've heard many times Lord Chaitanya's instructions of being humble in grass and torn in the tree. And they have even hit us very deeply, the importance of it at various times. But even though that's the case, I'm wondering, by what trick does the illusory energy keep us from really developing that and maintaining that state of mind?
He's asking that Mahaprabhu has said, Trinadapi Snichana, humble we should be. But by what?
But what trick, or how does the illusory energy
How does the illusory energy inhibit that? Easy. Very clear. We want to be the enjoyer. And you can't act as a material enjoyer and be humble. You may concoct in your mind, I'm actually a very humble person. Meanwhile, my senses are out of control. And no, that's not humility. You look at the way that Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Madhya Lila. If you don't save us, you'll not find anyone more entitled to your mercy. By saving us, your title as Patita Pavana, the deliverer of the most fallen, is realized in the best way. You won't find anyone worse than us. But it's not that they were just doing whatever they liked. They pledged their life to Lord Chaitanya's service. It's not that they just approached him with straw in their mouth and cloth around their neck, bound, signifying that you're the master. They're actually living the bhakti life. We are yours. So much so that when Sanatana Goswami wanted to commit suicide, because Lord Chaitanya kept embracing him, even though Sanatana Goswami's bodies were covered with itching, oozing sores, he said, what's the use of my body? But Lord Chaitanya told him, your body belongs to me. And Mahaprabhu turned to Haridas Thakur and said, Haridas, what do you call someone who misuses someone else's property? Isn't that what a thief does? So Sanatana Goswami got the point. Lord Chaitanya doesn't want me to commit suicide. Because he had this great plan that on the day of Rath Yatra, when the Rath cart comes out, Sanatana would throw himself under the wheels of the Rath cart in the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in that way, giving up his life, attain the supreme destination and rid himself of that sick body oozing pus. And what did Lord Chaitanya tell him? He said, Sanatana, if it's possible to attain Krishna by giving up the body, I'm ready to do it 1,000 times. But Krishna can only be captured by pure bhakti. So let us focus on the path of pure bhakti, and then real humility comes out. Otherwise, it's artificial. We're so humble that we don't do what Krishna wants. We're so humble that we just do our own thing. Real humility means I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. Let me live my life according to Krishna's instructions. If we've made mistakes, we should regret that and retake up the path of bhakti with determination. That is humility. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.